Hey guys, Richard at ProShots here. I wanted to put out a video this week. I know everybody's probably getting bored at the house. So let's talk about using our sights and how we might be lining up our sights. And then let's talk about the different ways we use them when we're shooting, because there's different ways to use them and I want to cover that. So what most of us are accustomed to when we're shooting is probably a center mass hold. If we don't have any kind of special sighting tools on the sights themselves, then we line up the tops of the sights and we center the front sight, and where those two imaginary lines cross is where the bullet's going to go when we pull the trigger. And so we put that on the center of the target and execute a good trigger pull. So that's our traditional center mass hold. Some pistols may be set up differently. A lot of us now are using night sights or gun sights that have dots on them. And when we're using those dots, it's important to realize that we're lining the dots up in a horizontal line and then a good front dot centered. And we actually have to cover the target with that dot to get the bullet to go where we want it to go. We call that a dead-on hold. So we actually have to obscure more of the target with those dots when we're using them. Some pistols, like target pistols, use a 6 o'clock hold where we line the sights up and actually we can see the entire target we're aiming at because those sights align just below the target. So the first step in knowing how to use your sights is knowing how to use your sights and how you're going to set up. I would say that most people could probably use a center mass hold and the dead-on hold with the sights they currently have on their gun. So next time you're at the range, I would encourage you to try center mass hold and dead-on hold and see what happens with your gun, because that's how we learn about our pistol and use it more effectively. When we get in the range and we start shooting, then there's different sight pictures we see. And what we're accustomed to in the range is seeing our perfect sight picture. We're focused on the front sight, we're practicing, and we just call this aimed fire, right? Because we're taking the time to aim carefully and critically and execute a good trigger pull. And that's great when we're practicing, but then at some point we want to shoot faster. And depending on everybody's individual ability, as we shoot faster, we get a less and less clear picture as we're shooting. If I'm trying to hold shots center mass, yet trying to get shots off in a hurry, then what we start to experience is a flash sight picture, and not a lot of people understand what a flash sight picture is. It's simply that you get a flash in front of you of these sights aligned in the center of the target. Now, if we're shooting faster, we expect that group size to grow a little bit. So if we say inside the 9 ring, I get a flash of these sights aligned, then I know it's okay to pull the trigger, stage the trigger, squeeze the trigger, the gun goes off. But rather than taking all the time necessary to get a perfect sight picture and focus on that front sight critically and execute an aim shot, we're going to shoot with that flash sight picture. The sights come back down into the target, we see them, we know we can pull the trigger. The other method that we use, and this is highly dependent on how close you are to the target and things like that, we might do some point shooting, which was developed back in World War II, but we're not actually using the sights. Most often these days when we're talking about point shooting, it's in a self-defense situation where we're shooting from, say, a defensive retention position, and we're not actually using the sights because the target's so close. So let's go in the range and we'll look at those different types of sight pictures, how it looks when we shoot those. All right, guys, so we've transitioned to the range. Now, this is just for illustration purposes, but I'm going to load this Glock up, and I'm going to shoot a few shots the way I normally shoot, which is with that center mass hold. I'm lining the sights up, and we're about halfway through the target, and we'll see if the gun goes where I expect it to go. And they are. And, I'm not shooting at I'm shooting close. So those shots went where I expected them to go. And if we look at it, all 3 shots, I think you can see that maybe on the target. I'll pull it off here in a second. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use a different sight picture. I'm going to use that dead-on hold. So now I'm going to, the one complaint I have about a Glock is I don't like their factory sights, but I'm going to use that dead-on hold, and I'm just going to do the same thing. And what I'm finding is with the dead-on hold, with the center mass hold, guess what? All of those shots are going to the same place. Hopefully you can see that. We'll pull the target down. So now I'm going to try the flashlight picture, which means I'm going to shoot faster. And I'm trying to keep the shots inside that 9 ring. I'm going to see that sight picture come back down into the target. And when I do, as soon as I do, I'm going to pull the trigger. And that's about what I would expect. We'll do another 3-shot group. A little bit faster. Obviously, now I'm critiquing myself. I'm shooting faster, so my trigger pull is suffering. They're still in the 10 ring. If we pull the target in really close and start talking about defensive shooting, then what we're going to do is we're going to be doing point shooting. So now I'm like a little tank turret, and up and down is controlled by my body position. I'm going to put my hand center of my chest to keep it out of the way. I'm going to index off the side of my body, and I'm just going to pull the trigger. Now, we use 2 different sight pictures, 2 different aiming methods, and 3 different types of sighting as we were shooting. And if we look at the target, if we practice these when we come to the range, it's going to net us good results. Those are my improper trigger pulls with the flash sight picture. This was the aim shooting with the center mass hold and with the dead on hold. And then my point shooting was still in the 10 ring. So there's different ways to use sights. There's different ways we see the sights when we're shooting. We need to practice all of those to really round out our shooting skills. I hope that helps this week. We look forward to seeing you at ProShots. Hope you have a good week.